What's up, enthusiasts? It's your boy Rob, back with another video. Guys, today we're going to be taking a look at a video from DaggerHeart, and this guy is someone I've watched just more so recently, covering primarily everything that's RPG, focusing mainly on D&D. But today he's actually talking about DaggerHeart, so we're going to take a look at his video. I'm going to give you guys my reaction, and let's just enjoy it. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you have not already. My throat is parched. Guys, I've got a 3D printer going on in the background. You may hear it, you may not, I don't know, but I will apologize for it anyway. Let's get into this video.
Welcome to DungeonCraft. I'm Professor Dungeon Master, and this is where we talk tabletop role-playing games. And today we're talking DaggerHeart, a new role-playing game by Critical Role and Darrington Press. They previewed some rules at Gen Con, and I'm going to talk about the main...
Guys, I've never really been big into the Critical Role TV show. It's just... I know it's got like a big elaborate setup, and I think that's cool and all, but I don't know, it's just something about watching people sit around playing RPGs that's something I just can't watch for a long time. At least not nowadays. I mean, back in the day, possibly, but now it's kind of like I just prefer wargaming. I'm more of a wargamer than anything now, which is surprising because I always thought that I'd be a RPGer, like first and foremost, forever. And now.
Mechanics today. But first, a word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by...
We're not going to give that sponsor any show.
Diabolical Forces of...
Oh, don't look, don't look. Love that movie, by the way, though. Frank Pizzetta is one of my idols.
I previewed their rule set for DaggerHeart at Gen Con, and I was there. I wasn't actually there. I mean, I did stop by the booth. I didn't get a demo, but I've read about it in the various articles that I am citing below, and they're going to be my sources today. I did say this about DaggerHeart just a few months ago. If I had to guess, this is a D&D clone, and why wouldn't it be? Why reinvent the wheel? For Mercer, this is like found money.
You know, I would think that that would be the easier approach, just making a clone of D&D, or maybe even taking a older edition and just throwing a few mechanics updates on top of it. But I'm curious to see what the professor tells us DaggerHeart is like. Let's get back
and I was totally wrong, as Bob Worldbuilder pointed out in his recent DaggerHeart video, which showed that clip. DaggerHeart is designed by Spencer Stark, and it uses a unique 2D12 mechanic.
So I stopped soon here, or kind of early, but I heard the 2D12. That's interesting.
For resolution, and it works like this. So like Dungeons and Dragons, DaggerHeart uses 6 ability scores, which are slightly different from D&D, but there are no derivative ability scores. That is to say, there's no 3 to 18 and a 16 is +3. It's just +3. You just use the bonus, which I have advocated for years, and I use in my own game, Deathbringer, because it's needlessly confusing. The dice should be different colors.
Smart idea, throwing in his own product to possibly sell a few copies. Smart man.
One representing hope and one representing fear. Let's say the red one is representing fear for us. And you roll the dice, add them together, add your ability score modifier, and meet or beat the target number. Let's say the target number is 16, you roll 9 hope, 7 fear, you succeed with hope, and you get a hope resource. It's like a pool of hope points that you could spend to boost your rolls or that of your other players. So it's got a cooperative element. Now let's say you succeeded with that same 16, but the fear die was 9 and the hope die was 7. That's still a success, but success with fear. That means next round you lose initiative and may suffer an additional penalty.
That's cool. That's really different. I don't think I've seen really anything close to this. Guys, let me know if you have. But so far, so good. I'm on board.
Advantage, you add a d6. If you have disadvantage, you subtract d6. Doubles mean a critical hit and a bonus result. And yes, I rolled double 12s the very first time I rolled dice on camera, which is extremely unlikely, so let's see that again in slow motion.
Do you own your home in South Carolina but still rent your electricity?
Whoa, don't
if you
tell
pay
people
more than
where I
$50 per month in
The damage system, as I understand it, is threshold damage. If you don't know what that is, Index Card RPG uses it. Imagine rolling damage and adding all your modifiers. If the result is over 10, you inflict a wound on your target. DaggerHeart does something similar. If you barely meet the threshold, you take what's called stress damage, and if you exceed that threshold, you might take up to 3 hit points damage. So you have much.
Okay, so far, I mean, I'm liking the game so far. I mean, from what I've heard, I mean, we've heard barely anything, but the good thing about RPGs is the game is really what you bring to the table. Basically, the narrative aspect of the game. I mean, everything else is just, you know, how am I going to come to a conclusion by rolling dice? And regardless of however you like to put the mechanic together to accomplish that, I mean, it's all about the players and the players coming together to make an elaborate story for everyone's enjoyment.
Lower hit points, and this is an attempt to curb the hit point bloat that you see in Dungeons and Dragons, which can really slow down the game, make it very draggy at high levels. And DaggerHeart.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but I've never, that I can remember off the top of my head, have played a game of D&D past, I think, 8th level. We usually get kind of not bored, but by 6th level, it's kind of like where we say, okay, let's do something different. Let's start another campaign. What I'll generally do is have my players start either at 1st or 2nd level. Sometimes I like just 2nd level, and we'll play to 6th or 8th level. And then we'll do is we will almost reset, give them time to make new characters, take a detox from the game, and then come back refreshed. I'm just not one of those guys that can play year-round same campaign. It gets kind of tiresome after a while, and I like to have new faces come to the table every once in a while.
Heart does not have death saves, which I do not like. I love it. There are 3 different ways to die. First, you can go out in a blaze of glory. You can get a critical success, but your character is killed. Second, instead of dying, you can use hope points and spend those to get hit points back and not die. And the third way is you leave it to chance. You roll the hope and fear die. If hope comes out higher, you live. If fear comes out higher, your character dies. And if you
I'm not a fan of that.
I'm not sure. Maybe you're in a coma for a while, but I love that idea personally. When your character levels up, you get domain cards, which are essentially skills and abilities. When you level up, you acquire new abilities and you get new cards, and you can have 5 abilities active at once. This is a great idea.
So I like that aspect of it. I feel like that's taking a little memento from 4th edition, maybe. Don't really hold my feet to the fire on this one, but 4th edition had an aspect that she could kind of take cards that was, I guess 5th edition has cards too, but cards could work a little easier with 4th edition because of the mechanics, but
because it eliminates flipping, which, if you're familiar with this channel, I absolutely hate. I hate looking up rules, and I don't allow my players to even look up rules on phones. We just live in the moment and work it out. And I think the idea that you have...
That's actually a good suggestion. Not bogging your game down by flipping through books to find out exactly how something works. Just go off the name of it. If you guys are not getting it completely right, that's fine. Just come back around to it on your next session. Say, okay, well, we've got here this ability and that ability. We don't know how they officially work. During a break, figure it out, come back, and we'll see what we can do about it. That's some good DMing right there.
Your skills on a card is great because it reminds the players exactly what they could do. They could just glance at it. Love that idea. Yeah. And they've got 9 classes and 20...
The card aspect is good. I like the card aspect. I'm not saying other games don't incorporate cards. You can always go out and buy spell cards for D&D, but this is good. I mean, kind of making that at the forefront of the mechanics, like saying, hey, this is the mechanic. You know, this isn't like a buy on, a tack on. You know, this is kind of how the game actually works.
7 different ancestries, including Qatari, they're cat people, and they've got angel people, and I'm sure they've got devil people, and that's not really my thing. I'm more of a sword and sorcery kind of guy, but let's just...
I love this guy. I love him. I love the sword and sorcery genre. You guys know how big of a fan I am of Conan. So yes, I don't need all the cat people and all of the 50 different races or anything like that, you know. It's good old human characters, an elf maybe, a dwarf. The basics. That's all we need, people. The basics.
Let's put a pin in that and return to that later. My general impression is I think many of these rules are really cool. They're a lot of what I've been talking about on Dungeon Craft for years. Like the D&D initiative system is way too slow. Nothing kills momentum faster than saying roll for initiative, and everyone's got to roll these dice and add modifiers and sort it all out just to figure.
There's a lot of ways you can kind of get around that. I mean, you can deal out cards randomly. You can just have your players roll initiative and then just insert your bad guys where you want to. Sometimes I just let my players go. If you've got a group of players that can organize themselves and reasonably take turns and just divide it out amongst themselves, let them take it. Say, okay, what are you going to do? Makes his action. What are you going to do? Makes his action. What are you going to do? And then from there you say, okay, now the bad guys are going to react. So you don't have to feel pigeonholed to a lot of the rules that are in these books, guys. Think on your toes sometimes. Mix it up. Do initiative one way, one campaign or one night, and then the next session do the initiative a different way. See what you like.
Figure out who goes first. It's easily the most boring part of Critical Role. I've watched Critical Role and I'm like, oh man, can't they just go to a group initiative? The other thing I don't like about 5e is the incredible hit point bloat, how characters have tons of hit points and so much damage capabilities that it just takes forever for them to roll out the damage and calculate it, and you have so many hit points, it really doesn't matter. I also think...
Now guys, I know you've seen some of my videos, or at least one of my videos, kind of covering that stuff as far as hit points. I usually don't even give the monster a set of hit points. I just allow my players to do some damage to the monster, the creature, and depending on how strong I need him to be, I may let the characters drop him a little early, or I might say, okay, I'm going to let this guy stick around for a little bit longer, or I want him to get away. But when your players know, hey, this monster has 52 hit points, and they're sitting there and they're calculating, so they know exactly when that monster is going to die, that could just get your story off track, because maybe you want this character to pop back up. So discard hit points, especially for your creatures, and let your characters have fun just going to town in melee.
The hope and fear mechanic is a clever way of using dice to craft a narrative. Think about Gandalf versus the Balrog. Gandalf wants to cast his spell and shatter the bridge. He needs an 18. He rolls a 9 hope and 10 fear. The bridge cracks and the Balrog plunges into the chasm, but not before it wraps its whip around the wizard's leg and drags him into the abyss. That is just so much more cinematic than I rolled a 4, I missed, a 16, and I hit. And it really plays to the strength of the Critical Role.
Now, it may play to the strength of Critical Role and their cast members and people that are able to quickly think on their feet in these narrative situations, but if you've got some new players that may not be able to really tell that story and just really draw you into it, it could be something where you're forcing people to get outside of their comfort zone, which I'm not totally against, but it can be mishandled sometimes. So make sure, if this is something you guys are going to be running, that you have a few situational, I guess, ideas that you can kind of fall back on. So when you know, okay, this guy rolled low in this one situation, it's the spare, you can just pull something out of a hat, and that way you're not getting yourself stuck trying to figure out, okay, well, what should happen now that, you know, this is a success, but it's kind of like a darker success, or whatever the mechanic is called. So yeah, just be careful, guys.
Who are experts at improv. It's an idea popularized by Powered by the Apocalypse games.
This is true. Dungeon World, I love some Dungeon World. My players did not care for it, unfortunately, but I used Dungeon World to really hone my DMing skills. So if you guys don't have a copy of that Dungeon World, go get a copy of Dungeon World. It's a cheap book that's thick. I love the cover art as well,
which permits more than just binary results. So you can succeed, but with a consequence, and the player gets to shape that consequence and discuss it with the Game Master. But for all these positives, I can foresee some challenges for DaggerHeart. RPGs like Shadow Dark and Old School Essentials are compatible with hundreds of old D&D modules, making the job of GM much easier. DaggerHeart is not, and will have to create its own adventure paths and ecosystem.
That's probably what they want you to, or want to do. They don't want you to pick up their core book and then just say, okay, well, I've got their book and I'm just going to house rule it to where I can play a bunch of D&D campaigns. They want to start a new IP. I mean, they want to bring people over to the DaggerHeart field and buy their products. So it's every reason for them to have a mechanic that is drastically different from the D20 system and D&D. So I applaud them for it. You know, it's brave. It's a brave move.
To support new game masters. Then there's this article by Chase Carter from Polygon. DaggerHeart, the Critical Role publisher's answer to D&D, feels indistinct. Who asked for another medieval if you squint TTRPG? What he means is, DaggerHeart's mechanics are new, but it may be too similar in tone to 5e. A game like Mörkborg has mechanics like D&D, but a Swedish death metal tone.
That Mörkborg, whatever it's pronounced, I've heard good things about that game. I'd love just to get that book just for the artwork alone and just throw it on my shelf and add it to my collection.
That sets it apart. DaggerHeart seems to occupy the same high-powered fantasy game space as 5e, and if you want to be a high-powered cat person, there's already a game for that. But I wouldn't count
no cat people. There will be no cat people here.
Mercer and Company out yet. I think much of DaggerHeart's success will depend on how it looks on camera. Matt Mercer and the cast of Critical Role are in the unique position to be able to demonstrate their game to a wide audience of millions of people every single week and give themselves free advertising. And that could make the difference. At least, that's what I think. But what do you think? Can DaggerHeart mount a challenge to D&D? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Also below you'll find...
Alright guys, so we're going to hear my thoughts about this situation. I do think DaggerHeart can give D&D a run for its money, mechanically. As far as taking attention away from D&D in droves, I don't see it happening. I don't think... D&D is just in such a unique position. It's got decades of history, and people are in love with it, you know, and it's the name role-playing is like synonymous with D&D. It's like it's the only thing a lot of people will think about, especially if you're outside of the hobby. When you think role-playing, you instantly think D&D. And so for wargaming, the adjacent would be 40K, where we're screaming, you know, at the top of our lungs like, hey, there are other games out there that you can be playing that are far better than 40K. But the masses just know the mainstream name, and there's nothing wrong with that, because eventually of some of those people that fall into the hobby because of that popular IP, they find other gems, and I'm one of those guys as well. So I wish DaggerHeart and, you know, everyone has got something to do with it, you know, the best of luck. I hope they can take some market share from Wizards of the Coast and D&D, because more games is just good for everyone. So guys, let me know down in the comments, will you be picking up DaggerHeart once it's available? Will you be watching Critical Role just so you can see the DaggerHeart mechanics in its full effect? I mean, just being played by, I guess, the best that can play it out there. Guys, like always, it's been a joy. I'll see you guys again tomorrow.